Welcome to Step by Step Gardening with me, David Domoney, here at Bridgemere Show Gardens.
Coming up in this episode, my guide to glorious hanging baskets, tomatoes planted in 3 ways, and my guide to sowing seeds outdoors.
Look how beautiful these are, and you'll have seen them in tubs, containers and hanging baskets all over the country throughout the summer months. Our plant of the month is in fact geraniums. It's such a very versatile plant. Now these ones here are called zonal geraniums because there's a slight zone marking on the leaf. In fact, some are slightly darker than others, but you see what I mean. And the colours are so lovely. You've got some mauve, some red. Oh, I really like this one here. In fact, look at the zonal markings on that one. And the flower as well. Light on the outside, darker in the middle. This one's my favourite. I do like, they call it Salmon, which is this lovely orangey red colour. Just looks so warm. You get these round leaves with them. You also get a spike with a flower cluster on top. And I say a cluster, it's not an individual flower, it's several flowers. And they open at slightly different times. You get an earlier flush opening here, and then, as you can see, plenty of buds underneath. They give so much joy. And it's not just zonal geraniums, there are many other interesting ones too. This is known as an ivy leaf geranium because the foliage looks similar shape to an ivy. Lovely zonal markings, but a little bit tighter in the centre. Now this ivy leaf geranium trails. The glossy foliage on it will cascade right the way down. Certainly when it comes to hanging baskets, it's a real plus, but containers as well. And the flowers, well, they're slightly smaller, a little bit more delicate. There is a half and half between zonals and ivy leaves, which are these ones here that you can see on the label there, semi-trailing. So if you check the labels when you're buying geraniums, it gives you a pretty clear identification. I mean, it's a real jewellery box of colour. These are the variegated foliage varieties. Look at this, almost hand-painted, green in the centre, then coming out to gold around the outside. I like this one here, a zonal marking, but really close to the frilly edge around. And over here, I've grown many of these. This has a little white tinge on the outside and a pink flower, so you get the combination of the flowers and the foliage. And then there are the stellar, or the star-like flowering ones, and these are really different. Look at the point on that there. Lovely apricot. Oh, look at the pink one. Isn't that gorgeous? Little tips of white around the outside, going to pink in the heart, and there's a lovely starburst white at the front. Very interesting foliage as well, slightly more crinkled in shape. Then we move on to the Regals, and as you can see, the foliage is very tight, but the flowers are larger and they're multicoloured. This one here, pink on the outside, deep red in the centre. Oh, it's like, it almost looks as if it's glowing. And over here, another bicolor. So much of a choice.
There are also ones with gorgeous scented leaves, ranging from mint to lemon. One even is a source of citronella that can repel insects.
From trailers to foliage to flower, it's a real giver, the geranium. Now the thing that all of these geraniums have in common is that they're tender. They come from warmer climes and won't make it through the winter here in the UK.
But you can overwinter them by bringing the plants into a frost-free area and keeping them cool, dry and well ventilated to prevent any mould developing during the cooler months.
If there's good aeration around and it's frost-free, there's every chance you can carry them through the winter and then plant them up again next spring. But if you're growing them in the garden through spring and summer, sunny position is what they like. They enjoy the warmth and they'll grow. Give them a fertilizer specifically focused to producing the flower, and that will have multiple different buds throughout the season, opening into beautiful flowers as well. Making sure you deadhead as well is important. As you can see on this plant here, I've got some open flowers. I've also got some that are finished, and underneath here there's new buds to come in. So get in amongst and pull out the old flowers that have finished. Try and take them right the way back into the stem. So you're not just pulling the petals off, you're taking the seed heads off. So the plant doesn't reroute its energy into producing seed. You want it to produce more flower. And that way it tidies it up. So instead of having dead, alive and buds, I've now just got alive and buds. And if you keep doing that, it'll help the plant perform. If you've got a geranium where the whole flower has now finished, the best thing to do is to take the stem right the way down at the bottom and pull the whole flower off. There's only one thing about these geraniums. They aren't geraniums. They have been misnamed for years. They are in fact pelargoniums. This is a geranium, a completely different plant. Okay, you can see the foliage is slightly similar, and if you take a look at the flower, there's some similarities there, but years ago we called Pelargoniums geraniums, and the name has stuck. But to be honest, Pelargonium, geranium, whatever you want to call it, these are some very spectacular summer plants.
If you've been following all our episodes, you will have seen me sow and prick out tomato and chilli plants. And now it's time to get planting.
Now, in the grow your own world, this happens to be the most popular plant, the humble tomato. And even if you don't have a garden, you can grow one. In fact, in this masterclass, I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can grow tomatoes in your own garden. First up, the humble grow bag. Now you can buy 2 different sizes of grow bag. You can buy the normal one, which is quite thin, or you can buy ones that are slightly thicker. This one here is called a deep planter. And when you get the grow bag, bear in mind that it's been on the pallet, all squashed down with other grow bags above. Give it a bit of a loosen. Bash the bag and spread it out to make sure that the compost inside is evenly spaced. Spend a bit of time doing this because I kid you not, it does make a difference to both the plants and to help you plant into it at the same time. One of the things that can make a real big difference to the success and the flavour of your tomatoes is a good regular supply of water, not letting it dry out. But you also don't want to let it sit in water at the same time. No one wants a soggy bottom, so just put some drainage holes in the back of your grow bag so when you've watered it, that excess water can drain free. This is an automatic watering system for grow bags. You put the grow bag over the top, these spike into the bottom of the grow bag. This is a capillary matting here that, like a wick, sucks up moisture from the reservoir here straight into the compost, which spreads it out. You've even got a little sort of gauge or monitor here that tells you how much water is actually in it. Now, there's also spaces here to be able to stick your canes. And if you take a look, there's little eyes here that correspond to that. So when the grow bag's on it, you can get a rough idea where to put the cane. So I'm going to lift it up. There we go. Just position it.
Once the bag is in position, cut the windows, folding back the flaps, and again loosening the soil inside to ease planting. And put your canes in place first so you don't spear through the roots of your plants.
So the first thing to do is to take out the excess compost. And you can hold your tomato. Lightly tip it upside down. There we go, good root system on that. And then straight into the grow bag and refill with soil. Here we are.
And although this grow bag has space for 3 tomatoes, I'm planting only 2. The middle is for one of my chilies I've grown from seed.
If I put another tomato in here, they'll all grow up. There's not much airflow going through, and the tomatoes are competing with each other for light, for food, and for water.
And as the tomato plants grow, their lower leaves will die off, giving the chilies plenty of space to grow while there are still tomatoes to pick higher up. And of course, don't forget to fill the reservoir regularly.
Now I'm just going to let them grow, send out roots, and get established. And in a future episode, I'll give you my top tips on how to get the best out of your tomatoes.
Next, tomatoes in a raised bed. And I'm spacing out the plants here by about 45 to 60 centimetres.
Now the real difference in between planting in a raised bed or a border rather than a grow bag is really the performance of the tomato, because they'll have much bigger root system because they've got much more space to run. There is an easier way of adding plenty of moisture and food, and because it will be a bigger and deeper root system, you're going to get a much stronger plant and many more tomatoes. Now there are many different types of tomato you can get. Some really nice tiny small ones, big ones, your traditional tomato, or even this one here, it's a pink one. So take your time to choose varieties that are just right for you. But these are all bush tomatoes, so they're perfect for growing in the ground, in a pot, or even in a grow bag. As I mentioned with the grow bag, the key to success with tomatoes is a regular supply of water. And if you've got them in an open bed or in a raised bed, sometimes it's not always easy to see whether you've watered enough to penetrate deep down. If you only water light, the water stays in the top segment of the soil and you end up with a lot of surface roots. If water is deep down, the root system will grow deep down, and the bigger root system means higher performance. So this might help. This holds a reservoir of water. You literally put it on the tomato as a collar and fill it with water, and then slowly through these small holes at the bottom, the water seeps out, down, 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 deep into the soil, enabling the whole area to be completely hydrated. There's a little thing at the top, which I'm just going to take that off. That's going to help me as a cane support. I'm just lowering it down over the top. This is about the right size to do them in. Any bigger, you won't damage the foliage. And then bed it in like that.
I'm adding the canes now while the plants are small, but won't need to tie the tomatoes until later and they're a little taller. Something that I'll show you in a future episode. And of course, keep the reservoir topped up.
And the third way to grow tomatoes is a hanging basket. So even if you've got no floor space, you can put a bracket up and grow them quite comfortably there. I mentioned earlier on about bush tomatoes being pretty good for grow bags and also into the ground. But there is another type, which are these. They're little tiny trailing. This one's called a tumbling tom yellow. And I've also got over here a tumbling tom red. So you can have a beautiful hanging basket planted with cascading tomatoes. Now, I've punctured a hole in the plastic in the container to give it good drainage. But remember, tomatoes require plenty of moisture. And in a hanging basket, you're going to have to be really careful about making sure there is plenty of moisture for your plant. One tomato in one big basket. And the bigger the basket you can get, the better, because it will hold more moisture and more food. So there you have it, a lovely hanging tomato plant. 3 distinct ways to grow tomatoes: grow bag, in the ground or raised bed, or in a hanging basket.
Back in March, I started off my begonia tubers in trays. With the warmer weather, they've really come along. So I've potted them on to help their growth. And as they're tender, I'll keep growing them indoors. But now, some of my earlier sowings are ready for their forever home.
Now this bed here, I'm going to plant my broad beans. Now you may remember this from an earlier episode when I planted them as small beans. And of course, I've since potted them up into larger containers. Now, you can do an awful lot in a small space. I mean, you're not going to have enough to feed your family for a year, but if you enjoy harvesting homegrown stuff, you should do it, even in the smallest space. So the beans here, I'm going to fit 4 in one row, turn them upside down, slight squeeze of the bottom of the pot. Look at the root system there, all from that little bean, and gently place it into position. I'm planting it to the same level, height-wise, that it was in the pot. There we go, and 4 of them in a line.
These plants have been hardened off, so they're used to the outdoor conditions, and I'm spacing the plants about 20 centimetres apart in a single row.
Now, beans are part of the legume family, and so's the sweet peas that are growing up here, and they leave something special in the soil at the end of the year, because those legumes, they take in nitrogen from the air right the way down into the roots. So when they've finished, take the top off, but leave the roots in and dig it all up. And that extra nitrogen in the soil area here is perfect for leaf growth. So the next crops that I plant in here for next year will be leafy veg, like either brassicas or salad crop, because the beans would have left the perfect food for them.
You can grow broad beans in the ground or in containers. If they're in the ground, unless the soil is very free draining, they don't need much watering. But they could do with a good soak as they start flowering. And, depending on when you plant them, they're normally ready to harvest between late spring to late summer.
Now, these beans will get quite tall. The good news is you don't need to stake them individually. In fact, what I'm going to do is create a little cage using bamboo canes and some garden twine. So the beans themselves more or less are leaning on the twine just to keep them upright. Now the secret is whenever you're using canes as supports, make sure they go in the ground enough to be very rigid. If you don't push them in far enough, they become wobbly and start flopping about. And of course you also want to hold the tension of the twine as well. Now I'm trying to line this up so the twine does not go anywhere near the sweet pea supports. So I'm going to effectively give it a bit of a push in. Oh, there we go. That's it. And just firm them in at the base just to make sure they're really rigid.
Then some simple garden twine tightly wrapped around the canes at 30 centimetres interval and reaching up to a height of about 1.5 metres will support the plants. As they fill out, they'll move around less, but you can still easily reach the beans to harvest.
I'm now going to add in another bedfellow, Marigolds. Now, you may have heard of the term companion planting, where you put different plants together that has a gardening benefit. And marigolds are certainly one of them, because if you smell the foliage, oof, I don't like it. Guess what? Blackfly don't like it either. So I'm planting some marigolds in the front space here that will help deter blackfly that may attack my beans. And it's not just the fact that they're helping the plants, it's also something nice to look at too. There we are. I'm going to plant another 3 at the back here, finish off the staking, and I'll keep you updated on how they're all growing.
When it comes to filling space with flowers and colour, I'm a huge fan of hanging baskets. They reach spots other planters can't reach, and they're very versatile. You can choose the style to perfectly suit you. So here's my guide to choosing and planting hanging baskets.
So you come into the garden centre to choose your hanging basket and you are spoilt for choice. Whole host of different ones. You got some that are wire, some that are fluted, then you've also got brackets as well. There's so much to choose from. So let me take a moment to demystify hanging baskets in a garden centre. Now the first one is the traditional wire basket. This is probably the basket your grandparents used to plant up and line with moss on the inside. I remember that as a kid because the moss was all on the floor when my dad did it because the birds came to take it to use for their nests. But nowadays it's a little bit easier. You can buy these small liners just to go on the inside. Even this coir one here that fits perfectly and stops the soil falling out, and then you can plant up. You can also cut some holes in the side to let plants go through. So the first option is wire baskets and a liner. There's also plastic versions of it as well, with lattice work that holds in the compost and holes to plant through the sides. Now, they're the ones that are designed for plants to be all the way around the outside. The container's not meant to be ornamental, just a facility to hold the soil and the plants themselves. Whereas these ones here, faux rattan, as this one is, and also interwoven twigs, where the basket is a bit of a feature and you only plant the top and some of it cascades down, but you've got plant and baskets as part of the effect. Now this one has got a plastic liner. You have to pierce a hole in that, of course, so the water drains through. Now the choice of the basket also needs to be paired with the choice of the bracket. The bigger the basket, the longer you need, so there's a clear separation. It's not banging on the side of the house or the like, so you can get bigger, more ornamental versions of it, or little ornamental ones like the owl on the side here. Or finally, if you are suspending your basket in a pergola or something similar, you can just put one of these J hooks in to attach it. You've got to understand the weight, because the bracket itself is holding quite significantly all the plants and the container, plus a whole load of soil. And when that's been fully watered, there's quite a bit of weight on it. So when you do attach this to the wall, you want to make sure it's attached securely. That's pretty good for hanging up high, but you also get little hooked baskets or containers that you can put on the top of your fence panels or even on a windowsill or something similar to that, making it ideal for planting up. But if you've got one big wall space, you can add these. Wall manger, I call it. They now call it a Victorian trough, where at the back there are holes. You attach screws into the wall and then you can position this on. So effectively, with hanging baskets and with also window boxes and these wall mangers, you can start vertically planting your area. And it's as simple as that for the choice. The easiest basket to plant is this one here, because it's effectively a container with some chains. But if you want a really good visual effect, this is the one to choose, because you can plant the top and you can plant all the way around the outside. And I'm going to show you how to do it. Now the theme of this basket, I'm going to make it insect friendly. So there are plants that I'm going to put in there that's really good for the pollinators that come for some food and help pollinate the plants. And the key thing with the selection is to choose 3 different plants that have their own character. Tall, big centerpiece, just like this Regal Pelargonium here. Then middle fillers, volume fillers, like this lovely Nemesia here. And then finally, the trailing plants, like these trailing lobelia here.
I'm using peat-free multi-purpose compost, and to keep the soil moist, I'm adding a water-retaining gel. These granules that turn into gel hold a lot of water, and as they do so, they expand, so only add the recommended amounts.
If you were to put 2 handfuls of it, it just grows and expands and becomes a massive jelly and pushes all your plants and all your compost out onto the floor. Believe me, I know. First time I used it, that's exactly what happened. Read the instructions. So what I'm now going to do is plant through this a series of trailing lobelia plants. Now, it's not too complicated. To punch a hole through it, you need one of these, a finger. I'm going to slightly move my finger just to separate. There we go. And there's a little hole in the coir itself. I'm going to take up one of these little lobelia. The roots are what I'm going to push through. Tease it in to the basket itself. And then, there we go. When it's through, I'm shoring up some of the compost behind. So it's more or less sitting on a little bed of compost. And I'm going to work my way around, planting lobelia all the way through. They may look a little small at the moment, but no worry, they'll establish themselves pretty quickly in the basket. But their size enables me to handle them and get them through those small holes. Take your time, ease it through. There we are. And before you know it, they'll have grown, cascading out, and create a beautiful array, both foliage and flower. Hey presto, all the way around the outside, you've got trailing lobelia to cascade down.
For the next level, I've added more compost and gel, and I'm starting with my Regal Pelargonium as a centrepiece.
Leave a little bit of a gap so when you're watering, the water isn't just rolling off, it's allowed to sink in a little bit and then slowly soak through. What I'm going to add now is some surface trailing plants and some fillers. I'm trying to get in between lobelia here so I'm not damaging the roots just underneath the soil. Lightly firm in. And as you can see, I've left a little gap in between the plants to enable them to spread out. This one here, of course, will be cascading down. This one here will be filling up and being a bit more upright. If it's overpacked, they start to compete not only for food, but also water and light as well. And you end up with quite a messy hanging basket. Plus, you don't want to put too much in because it'll cost you more money. These plants will naturally grow here. There we are. And I'm now just backfilling with compost to make sure there's no gaps. And in the space between the plants as well, making sure that's topped up. One more in, and I think that should be enough. And in it goes. But remember, as you're hanging this up, you've got to water it. So you might need a lance or something similar to that to attach onto your hose to reach up to be able to give it a really good soaking. And the key thing with hanging baskets is to keep watering and be very careful of the eaves of the roof coming out and stopping any rain getting into your hanging basket. Sometimes you think it's been raining all day, the basket must be soaked. But because they're underneath the eaves, they're missing that water. And hand watering by you is incredibly important. There we are, a planted hanging basket.
Hey, I hope my friendly onlooker approves. As we reach May, the ground is really starting to warm up. And with longer daylight hours too, it's time to get your seeds out.
In earlier episodes this year, you've seen me sow quite a lot of seeds into pots, put them in the greenhouse or into a protected area. But now the weather's warmed up, you can sow seeds directly into the ground. And if you like or fancy the opportunity to start growing your own, you can do it in an incredibly small space. This is just 1 square metre bed, and I'm going to grow 3 particular crops. Love carrots, tasty leeks and cheeky radishes, all in one area. Now what I'm doing here is breaking up the surface of the soil and making sure it's well cultivated, so I can get as fine a tilth as I possibly can, a little less lumps really, because the seeds are quite small. When they germinate, I just want it soft enough for them to be able to send out roots and get themselves established. So I've roughly split the bed into 2. Now I'm going to do something with this one a little bit later, but on this side I'm going to plant those 3 vegetables. So I'm just going to space out a little row that the seeds I'm going to go into, and I'm using a trowel, just the edge of the trowel, to guide that in. Now, I suppose I could go out, get loads of pegs and string and or bamboo canes and the like, but the bed's only small. If you've got a keen eye, you can equally divide the area up. So I've got 3 distinct rows, approximately 20 centimeters apart. So with most seeds, they go into the ground about 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeters deep. Now for the seeds. It's great fun sowing seeds. The best thing is all the information's on the back when you sow and when you harvest. You sow a little later, you harvest a little later. There's nice little guides there. And of course, there's all the sowing distances and row distances all on the back. If you open up a packet, there we go. You have a foil packet inside with the seeds themselves. There are always more seeds than you need. But a useful bit of information on the back of the packet is when it was packed and when it's out of date. This one here is 2030. Therefore, what I don't use, I can use again next year. So it gives you a bit of a good idea. Here's what you've got inside. So what I've got here is some very, very small seed. And there's 2 things in your mind. One is, you don't want to sow it too thinly, because if some of them don't germinate, you end up with having gaps. And you don't want to sow them too thickly, because you'll have to be weeding out some carrots if 2 of them are almost in the same hole. Problem is, if you weed out some carrots, the scent of the foliage being crushed attracts the carrot root fly that come in and like to munch on your carrots. So it's a sort of half and half. Spacing with carrots is about 5 centimeters, something similar to that. And I'm going to do the best, even with these maulers, to try and get a very accurate sowing. Sometimes you'll end up dropping 2 seeds in the same place, but there's no worry. When it germinates, you can take a look and take 1 or 2 out if you need be. They're quite light carrot seeds, so they're pretty easy to see. Some seeds are like jet black. The moment they hit the soil, they've completely disappeared. There we are. And that's it. Carrots sowed. I'm going to cover them all at the end, but I am going to label it now. The next crop that I'm going to do is leeks. The carrots I will be able to harvest probably the end of summer, beginning of autumn, but the leeks, it's going to be well into the winter before they're ready. Now, leek seeds, but they're also quite small, a bit bigger than the carrots. The issue is they're very dark. So the moment they hit the soil, unlike the carrot's goldeny colour, I don't get to see where they are. And these need spacing 3 times as much as the carrots.
That's about 15 to 20 centimetres apart, depending on how large you like your leeks.
The other advantage of planting leeks along other vegetable plants is the smell of the leeks deter some insects that attack the other plants. Next up, radishes. Now, interestingly enough, these seeds don't come in a foil packet, and they're considerably bigger and easier to handle. Really nice little texture, just like loads of little different coloured pebbles there. Right, let's get these into the ground. Planting distance of these, about the same as the carrots, about 5 centimetres, something similar to that. But you can slightly over-sow and then thin out with these as you wish. And they are a fast crop, radishes. One of the fastest vegetables. You can go from sowing to eating in about 4 to 5 weeks.
I've chosen a rainbow variety of radishes, and I do recommend you eat them as soon as they are ready. Otherwise, they'll have a woody texture and a slightly bitter taste.
And because they produce so quickly, you can just sort of like clear the drill out, and the drill is the line where you plant them, and do another crop. There we go.
Finally, Cover over your seed drills, lightly firming down the soil on the top, and give them a thorough water. Keep the soil moist but not waterlogged over the coming weeks to aid their germination.
Now remember, it is May, we can get late frosts. If that's the case, you can use this horticultural fleece to spread out to add that extra bit of insulation.
And do weigh it down around the edges to make sure it doesn't blow away and land in your neighbours.
So there you have it. Our next episode is a Chelsea Flower Show special, so don't miss out. This channel is full of great gardening content and it's all for free. So why not subscribe to this channel so you can catch up with all the latest videos. Also, please put in the comments any topics you'd like me to cover in a future episode. Thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoy your garden.